Imagine stepping outside for a quick errand, only to realize you might not make it back without serious harm. Yes, the heat raging across the country this year can genuinely threaten your life in minutes. That is not a line from a hypothetical disaster movie. It is very much a reality for countless Americans this summer. Today, we are diving deep into the extraordinary weather crisis unfolding across the United States and asking questions that could mean the difference between staying safe and landing in the hospital. How did these scorching conditions arise, and why might you be walking a razor's edge just heading out to your backyard? In this in-depth exploration, we will answer the most pressing questions about the nature of extreme heat. The dreaded heat dome that is acting like a suffocating lid of sweltering air over entire regions, and which geographic areas are set to endure the highest risk from ultraviolet levels so intense that merely stepping outside can burn your skin in a matter of minutes. We will also connect the dots, showing you how greenhouse gas emissions and changing ozone conditions play a part in cranking up the temperature and the danger level across the country. Stay with us, because by the time we reach the end, you will have a new appreciation for the power of the sun and a deeply practical perspective on how to keep your loved ones safe. In this episode, we will relive some of the most astonishing weather records in recent memory and examine just how the current situation compares to historic heat waves. We will look at why the southwestern states, such as Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and parts of Southern California, have become especially hot zones for ultraviolet rays that can sunburn unprotected skin in just 5 minutes. We will also see how even typically cooler regions, like northern states along the Canadian border, are facing rising temperatures and a serious uptick in dangerous UV indices. As the saying goes, knowledge is power. Without the right know-how, a simple picnic or quick walk could turn into a life-threatening scenario. The heart of the story revolves around a phenomenon known as a heat dome. Visualize a colossal atmospheric barrier that prevents hot air from rising and dispersing. Instead, it traps and compresses the heat closer to the Earth's surface, magnifying the temperature like a giant magnifying glass. This can push the thermometer to triple-digit ranges, a scenario in which serious heat stroke or even death can happen in less time than it takes to watch your favorite television show. In this script, we will explore precisely how a heat dome develops, what environmental factors influence its intensity, and why it has become so severe for large swaths of the United States in these recent months. But the story does not stop with the heat dome. Scientifically speaking, heat alone is not the entire picture. The UV index plays a massive role in determining how risky it is to linger outdoors. If you have ever seen a 0 to 2 rating on a weather app, you might have thought that was nothing to worry about. And you would be right. At that level, you can feel relatively comfortable outside without major protections. But what happens when the index climbs to 6, 7, or even 8? At those ranges, your skin can start to feel the burn in fewer than 10 minutes if you do not have the right protection. More unsettling still is that some portions of the country will see a UV index of 11, 12, or even 13 and beyond. That is the difference between staying safe outside and risking a severe sunburn, one that can lead to complications ranging from infection to an increased likelihood of developing skin cancer over time. Which states are facing the highest levels of exposure, and why are some places that have seldom grappled with catastrophic weather now sounding the alarm about extreme heat advisories? In the southwestern states, including large parts of Arizona, New Mexico, western and eastern Texas, Southern California, Nevada, Utah, and portions of Colorado, we are talking about dangerously intense sunlight. By the time we make it further northeast, into states like Kansas, Wyoming, and even the far reaches of the Midwest, you might think the risk diminishes, but that is not always true. Large swaths of the country are pinned under the same heat dome, and the climbing UV index can be just as menacing. As for the East Coast, places like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York also face higher readings than usual. Meanwhile, states as far north as Maine are seeing an increase in these scorching midday hours. And yes, even Alaska has issued its first ever heat warning, an unimaginable scenario for those who think of Alaska as perpetually chilly. Before we venture any further, here is a simple but heartfelt request. If you find these insights critical, or perhaps even a bit shocking, and you believe more people should be aware of these life-threatening conditions, give this episode a quick like or share it around. Your small gesture can help propel this vital message so that others can protect themselves too. Now, let us dive back into some of the sobering facts surrounding these extreme summertime conditions. When we speak of a potential for lethal consequences, we are not engaging in hyperbole. Experts warn that, under conditions topping 100 degrees Fahrenheit, while under direct sunlight, you might begin to experience signs of heat stroke or heat exhaustion in under 15 minutes if you lack shade, hydration, and other precautions. Children, older adults, and individuals with certain health conditions are at even greater risk. Their bodies simply do not regulate temperature efficiently enough to withstand these extremes without running a risk of organ damage or even death. If you think, "That will never happen to me," keep in mind that many of those who suffer from heat-related ailments often believe the same. The physical effects, such as dizziness, nausea, headaches, muscle cramps, and confusion, can come on suddenly and escalate quickly. For example, a family might decide to enjoy a summer barbecue in the backyard, believing it will just be a casual midday gathering. But if they are contending with not just 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade, but a UV index of 11 or higher, that midday barbecue can turn into an emergency situation far sooner than anyone expects. The sun's ultraviolet rays, particularly during peak times, penetrate your skin, causing burns and accelerating dehydration. Some might assume that a short period in the pool wards off the heat. Yet, the sun's reflection off the water can intensify those rays, putting swimmers at elevated risk of sunburn. In the southwestern desert areas, the dryness in the air and the scorching ground temperature can exacerbate the situation for individuals engaged in any kind of manual work, from road construction to farm labor. One of the under-discussed aspects of this situation is the link between extreme UV exposure and skin cancer, as well as the amplified risk of melanoma. Sunburn, in many cases, might seem like a trivial annoyance that can be relieved with aloe lotion and a few days' rest indoors. But the long-term consequences of repeated sun exposure without adequate sunscreen can be grave indeed. Accumulated exposure to high-intensity UV rays can trigger mutations in skin cells, setting the stage for potential disasters further down the line. Dermatologists urge individuals to wear protective clothing, hats, sunglasses, and liberal amounts of sunscreen with a high SPF rating when outdoors. Even on a cloudy day, those rays can be potent if the UV index is high. Another intriguing question arises. Has this phenomenon always been present, or are we seeing a new normal where the boundaries for summer heat and UV intensity are constantly being pushed upward? Many researchers indicate that climate change is exacerbating the situation. Greenhouse gases are rising steadily, and this contributes to an overall heating of the planet. Simultaneously, the ozone layer, or ozonlayer, our invisible shield against solar radiation, has been weakened in some parts of the atmosphere. Although global efforts have aimed to mitigate ozone depletion, the interplay between greenhouse gases and the ozone layer remains complex, leaving certain regions more vulnerable than ever before. As global temperatures continue to climb, these episodes of extreme summertime heat and high UV indices become increasingly common, intensifying worries among scientists, health experts, and everyday citizens alike. In the southwestern region, states like Arizona and New Mexico often experience scorching summers, but the severity and geographic spread of this season's heat wave is something else entirely. Temperatures can surge beyond 105 degrees Fahrenheit, while big cities like Phoenix experience unrelenting weeks where the mercury rarely dips at night, offering very little relief. Without nighttime cooling, your body gets no respite from the day's punishment. In southern Florida, the story is slightly different, but no less alarming. That region of the country has high humidity, which magnifies discomfort and makes it more difficult to cool off through sweat evaporation. When the UV index also soars in these humid conditions, your skin is practically under assault from multiple angles, further stressing your body's cooling mechanisms. Let us shift to the Midwest. You might think the rolling landscapes of the Dakotas or the Great Lakes region would be worlds away from desert-like conditions, yet residents there are bracing for wave after wave of oppressive sunshine. This is partly because of how the heat dome is positioned. It does not care whether an area is typically moderate. Once it establishes its high-pressure zone, the phenomenon can bake farmland and cityscapes alike, turning everything from backyard gardens to sprawling highways into heat-trapping surfaces that only intensify the searing conditions. Over in the Northeast, cities such as New York, Philadelphia, and Boston have had to remind people that shocking temperatures are more than just an inconvenience. heat stroke is a very real danger, especially in heavily urbanized settings where asphalt and concrete retain heat. Many Americans operate under the assumption that staying indoors with air conditioning is the fail-safe solution. Indeed, for some, that is a practical short-term fix. However, think of the many who either do not have air conditioning or cannot afford to run it constantly. Historically, areas of the country with milder climates might have never seen a pressing need for central air systems in the past. But now, as unpredictable and record-breaking heat waves barrel through places like the Pacific Northwest, entire communities discover they are underprepared. Prolonged heat can strain healthcare infrastructures as well, with hospitals reporting surges in patients experiencing dehydration, heat exhaustion, or worse. Economically disadvantaged families also struggle with rising utility prices, leaving them in a precarious situation. Either try to endure the stifling heat with minimal cooling or face financially crippling bills. This interplay between extreme heat and everyday life sparks a broader conversation about local governance and emergency responses. City officials in places like Denver, Las Vegas, and Houston have had to open cool-down centers, public libraries, or recreational facilities offering respite to those who cannot escape the relentless blaze. Furthermore, power grids face unprecedented stress, as everyone attempts to run air conditioners at maximum capacity, risking widespread blackouts if the grid is overburdened. This is no small matter when you consider that a single day without power during a triple-digit heat wave can transform routine tasks into genuinely lethal endeavors. Amid all these sobering facts and grim possibilities, there is a spark of optimism. If we collectively acknowledge the dangers, we can take concrete steps to safeguard ourselves and our communities. Stay hydrated does not merely mean sipping water every once in a while. Best practices suggest drinking small amounts of water frequently, even if you do not yet feel thirsty, to stay ahead of dehydration. Light-colored, loose-fitting clothing can reduce the absorption of solar radiation. Wide-brimmed hats and wraparound sunglasses shield the face and eyes. And, perhaps most crucially, proper sunscreen application, covering all exposed skin at regular intervals, can be the difference between a mild day outdoors and a trip to the emergency room. The best solutions are often a combination of personal responsibility and community support. Check on your older relatives or neighbors who might not have excellent cooling systems. Offer them a ride to a climate-controlled mall or a local cooling center if available. For families with small children, planning any outdoor activities early in the morning or closer to dusk can help dodge the times when the sun's rays are most direct and damaging. Protecting animals is also vital. Dogs, cats, and livestock can be overwhelmed by heat just as humans can. So, ensuring they have plenty of water and, if possible, a cool place to rest could save their lives. Let us step back and ask, are we, as a society, ready to adapt to hotter, more intense summers as a permanent shift? The debate around climate change suggests we might need to. Even if broader climate policies bring improvements over the long term, in the near term, many regions must learn to cope with increased temperatures and a higher frequency of extreme weather events. Officials may consider new housing regulations that require more efficient insulation, and city planners might invest in tree planting programs that help shade sidewalks and public spaces. These are not theoretical ideas. In some cities, they have already proven successful at moderating local temperatures by a few critical degrees. Of course, greenhouse gas emissions remain a central factor. The more carbon dioxide and other heat-trapping gases accumulate in the atmosphere, the more we experience these oppressive temperature spikes. Even with some progress, the pace of global emissions reduction lags behind the rate at which the climate is warming. And as certain layers of the atmosphere degrade, the sun's ultraviolet radiation becomes an even bigger concern. It is one thing to talk about record-breaking temperatures. It is another to realize that the Earth's protective mechanisms against harmful solar radiation may be weaker than they were a few decades ago. This leads us to a crucial turning point. How will local communities educate and protect themselves against these skyrocketing ultraviolet indices? Places that once had milder summers might not have an ingrained culture of wearing hats or consistently applying sunscreen. If they downplay the dangers, they risk a surge in sudden health crises and a long-term rise in serious skin conditions. Education must start early. Children should learn about UV safety in school, just as they learn about fire safety or severe storm preparedness. Simultaneously, awareness campaigns can encourage residents to check the UV index daily, just as they would check the temperature. It is a small step, yet it might save a life by prompting people to decide that today is the day to stay indoors, or at least reduce outdoor time, as the index hovers at an extra hazardous 13. On a personal level, reflecting on how the environment shapes our everyday habits might spark new ways to protect ourselves and loved ones. Perhaps you used to exercise in the midday heat, but now you realize it is simply not wise during these potent summertime swells. Or maybe you used to think sunburn was just an unfortunate side effect of a fun beach day, yet now you understand the cumulative harm it can inflict. Knowledge can be transformative. When we collectively shift our perspective, we can lessen our personal risk, keep vulnerable individuals safe, and lend a helping hand to neighbors who might not have the means to weather these blazing conditions on their own. If you have stuck with this deep dive until now, it likely means you value these insights. Perhaps you feel inspired to alter your daily routines, or maybe you have recognized the need to discuss these issues more openly in your local community. Whatever your reaction, consider joining us on this journey by subscribing or following. That way, you will not miss updates when we cover the next wave of breaking developments or share vital strategies for safeguarding wellness in these challenging times. The heat is not abating anytime soon. Staying informed can make all the difference. Looking ahead, it is worth noting that meteorologists and health agencies are collaborating in ways we have not often seen before, in an effort to improve forecasting models and share public health advisories more rapidly and effectively. The hope is that with advanced warning, local communities and families alike can stock up on essential supplies such as cooling packs, water, and protective gear. Nonetheless, the unpredictability of severe weather events continues to challenge even the best-laid plans. If a heat dome decides to park itself overhead for weeks at a time, living conditions can deteriorate quickly, revealing vulnerabilities in local infrastructure, housing, and healthcare systems. The core message here is that none of us is immune to the challenges of extreme summer weather. You might think it is too hot only in the desert or only in places near the equator. This is incorrect. Experts forecast that the Northwest, Northeast, and Mid-Atlantic states will likely break records in the coming years, complicating life for people who have never dealt with triple-digit heat. Meanwhile, states already accustomed to scorching summers may see those scorchers move from a seasonal inconvenience to a potential disaster scenario. That is why, even in a country as large and diverse as the United States, it is vital to think collectively. Everyone, from an Alaskan fishing village to a bustling Florida coastal city, stands to gain from quality information and practical strategies. There is also the matter of how quickly things can turn from manageable to urgent. Heat stroke, for instance, can start with basic symptoms, maybe a twinge of lightheadedness or a mild headache. But those can escalate into collapsed consciousness or dangerously high internal temperatures if not addressed immediately. The difference between a safe outcome and an irreversible tragedy can hinge on whether you had the presence of mind to recognize the warning signs. Did you know to look for confusion or slurred speech? Are you aware that a person can stop sweating entirely when they move into the critical stages of heat stroke? These are details that, in calmer times, might not seem essential, but during a dangerous heat wave, they become crucial survival knowledge. And let us not forget the role of sunlight, in an era where many of us spend hours behind screens, perhaps losing track of time while indoors. When we finally do go outside, the intensity can catch us off guard. The body needs time to acclimate. Rushing out to mow the lawn for 30 minutes under a scorching midday sun, when you have spent the rest of the year primarily indoors, is risky business. Instead, incremental exposure, plenty of shade breaks, and a watchful eye for signs of overheating can help you avoid an urgent trip to the nearest clinic. By now, you might be thinking, this is overwhelming. Is our summer destined to become a battleground against the heat dome every year? The honest answer remains uncertain. Climate patterns are complex, and while some years may experience less extreme conditions, the overall trend is pointing toward more days of intense heat, including historically unprecedented UV numbers in certain regions. Scientists suggest that we must prepare for consistent waves of oppressive weather, heightening the urgency of these discussions. So, what should you do today, right now, to protect yourself against this wave of extraordinary heat? Start by checking local advisories, not just for temperature forecasts, but also for the UV index. If it is creeping into the 8 or 9 range, block off midday hours for indoor tasks. If it is surging past 11, seriously consider limiting your outdoor time as much as possible. Keep your body cool by wearing light clothing and draping a cold towel around your neck if necessary. Drink more water than you think you need. Our bodies often do not sound the thirst alarm until dehydration is already well underway. As you check forecasts, you might also see warnings labeled excessive heat watch or excessive heat warning. These notifications are not meant to scare or annoy you. They are in place to alert the public to real potential dangers. At such times, local officials may set up cooling centers, whether in community centers, libraries, public schools, or even sports arenas. Keep track of where these places are, especially if you or anyone you know struggles to maintain a comfortable indoor temperature at home. It can be the lifeline that ensures everyone in the neighborhood weathers the storm, or in this case, the unrelenting sunshine. Although the entire situation might feel dire, every proactive measure we take can help mitigate the seriousness of the upcoming challenges. The United States, vast and varied, now faces a common enemy: extreme heat, amplified by greenhouse gas emissions, and an occasionally thinning atmospheric shield. Many Americans have already proven resilient, but vigilance remains essential, and that is where harnessing collective willpower becomes paramount. By spreading awareness, advocating for better infrastructure and inclusive resources, and urging local and federal officials to prioritize climate adaptation. As we approach the end of this discussion, it is crucial to keep an open mind about how rapidly conditions can evolve and how significantly they can affect health, daily routines, and entire communities. The planet's climate is in flux, and the intervals between record-breaking heat waves seem to be shrinking. That is why talking about it, frequently and openly, forms the bedrock of any genuine community-level preparedness. If you found value in these insights, or if you learned something that could very well save a life, consider sharing this message or passing it along to a friend. In times like these, awareness and preparedness can never be overstated. We have reached the end of our comprehensive look into the scorching temperatures, the sky-high UV indices, and the profoundly unsettling truth that stepping outside might be riskier than ever. From the southwestern deserts to bustling East Coast metropolises to the farthest corners of Alaska, no region is entirely off the hook. But hopefully, you now feel better equipped to face the heat. Remember, these conversations serve as a guardrail against complacency. Whether it is 5 minutes or 15 minutes outdoors, ensuring you are fully informed about the risks and the precautions can truly make the difference. Stay safe, stay cool, and be prepared to adapt. Because this is not just another hot summer, it might be the template for many summers to come.